lines up on Samech Gimel Amid Beis. We're in the sugya of Leisishchet al Chametz Dam Zivchi, that there's halacha you can't shech the Korban Pesach if there's chametz around. We had a machlokas between Rabbi Ishlakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Ishlakish has to be in Nazara, and Rabbi Yochanan can be what? Any place in your possession, right? Even if it's owned by a person by the Chabura, the Shoichet, the Zoyrik, even if they're not in the Chabura, or anyone else in the Chabura, if it's Geshachtin for anyone else in the Chabura, Rabbi Ishlakish held that what? That you are chayiv. This is the question where that Rav Oshia asked. The Shoichet does not have any chametz.
Rabbi, where are you again?
I'm on Samech Gimel on the base, about 14 lines up.
Thank you.
Where the lines get wide, thin, go up at 6 lines. The Shoichet does not have any chametz in his possession, but a person in the Chabura does. So obviously he didn't hear the Abbas Poishit according to Reish Lakish. Guys, look at the top line of the Stomach base. Right? It has, or he says clearly, you would be chayiv. So what's he asking a question? So obviously he had the shayla. He wasn't Poishit like Rabbi Yochanan, like Reish Lakish. So ma'u didn't be. So Amalei mikasiv, does it say le'sishkat al chamatzecha? It doesn't say you shouldn't shecht on your chametz with the pronoun you. Le'sishkat al chametz kasiv. It says al chametz. So therefore, even if one of the people of the Chabura has it, you would be chayiv. It doesn't say chametzecha, anyone. Amalei. So Ramami said, "Hachi afilu le'echa b'sleifa olam." Then even Rashi says, if you just have it in the Azara and it doesn't belong to anybody. In other words, once it doesn't say chametzecha, your chametz. Let's say it doesn't even belong to the Bnei Chabura, and you're shechting it, and it's right there in the Azara, and you warn not to shecht it. You also should be mechayev. Why? Because once it says it doesn't have to be your chametz, guys. Once it doesn't have to be your chametz, so have chametz here in the Azara. I'm shechting it, and I'm warned. If you shecht it, you should be chayev. It doesn't say chametzecha, so even though it's not your chametz, you should be chayev. Amalei, and for the Gemara, Amalei, Amakra le'sishchet v'le'yalin. The pasuk goes ahead and it says, le'sishchet al chametz dam zivchi v'le'yalin la'boike zevach chag Pesach, and do not leave over any meat from the Korban Pesach. So we're going to make a tzushel. We're going to compare the isser of having chametz to the isser of lina, of leaving something over. Now, just like lina is yours, okay. V'le'yalin le'sishchet al chametz. Those who are commanded not to leave over, which is the Nei Chabura. Again, those people are in the Chabura to eat it. They are commanded not to leave it over, right? So those are the people who are in the ballpark of chametz. So Mamela, if you have good, this chametz is not yours. But since there's no dinner lina vis-a-vis this chametz, it has to be lina vis-a-vis your chametz. So the lina goes ahead and creates that the whole chabura, even if it's not yours, if it's owned by somebody, you would be chayiv, but not fremda strange chametz. Omer of Papa Hilkach, koyin amaktir es hachelev, the koyin that burns the chelev, oiver b'loy sasei, he will be over in the sasei. Hoyel v'yeshnei b'chal alon esemurim. And you hear this chiddush. The koyin, if he has chametz in his possession, and he is mitzvah to burn the part that goes to Hashem, and there's a din of lina in that part. If he burns it, he has chametz, he be chayiv. Again, it doesn't have to be a chametz. The Bnei Chabura doesn't have to be a chametz. It just has to be a person who is mitzvah and not leaving over from this Korban Pesach. Since the kohen is mitzvah, then he also would be over on the isser. So we have an expansion of the isser of le'sishchet al chametz dam zivchi to include a kohen who is mitzvah in leaving over the imur. Tanya Kavasi Rav Papa. We have a brayso that's right to Rav Papa. This chiddush nifla that he just said. Hashoichet es haPesach al chametz. If someone says Pesach on chametz, oive b'loy sasei. Emasai. How do we define this lav? Bisman shul l'shoichet. The chametz belongs to the shoichet. Or l'zoyrek. The chametz belongs to the zoyrek. Or le'echad b'nei chabura. Or it belongs to one of the people in the chabura. Then in all those cases you'll be chayav. If it's owned by somebody else, then you don't have to worry about it. The echad hamaktir. Here's Uriah, guys. Whether it's the sheikhet, or the one who does zrika, or the one who burns the emurim. Here's Uriah that he's in the ballpark. It says v'echad hamaktir chayiv. Aval halkop, the maktir would be chayiv. Aval hamoylik esa oif. The carbon chatas required, or oilus oif, they did something called malika, where they would hold the bird with two hands, and the kohen with his fingernail would go through the back and sever the kana and the veshet, while breaking the mafrakta of the animal, breaking the bone, the neck bone of the animal. This is called malika, and this is what outside the Beis Hamikdash it's called nevela. Inside the Beis Hamikdash it's called malika. So I would say you would eat a chatas oif. Yes, you eat a chatas oif. Oil oif is burnt, chatas oif is eaten. So whether it's a shoichet, whether it's a zayrik, if someone does malika on the oif on the 14th, ain't over below klum. He wouldn't be over anything. If you do it there, be over anything. Let's see Rashi. We said in previous guys, we said that let's say a guy is a Zov or Mitzayra, and we can bring his carbon to an to eat the Pesach. We discussed this, right? Then the Kosher Lakrova Achat Tamid Shehu Zman Shchitas Pesach Eina Over Lo Mishum Leisishchel Chometz Lo Kama Mukila Kereb Shimon the Mechayiv Nami Yashad Zvachim B'Moyed V'Hachat Time of the Petur. Why you put over here? Yishum the Yedalad Le Mechayiv Olecha Ashad Zvachim V'Oif the Mechalav Dafka. On Yedalid, since it's the Zman of the Pesach, you're not chayav on any other carbon. So when it says over here oif, it's lav dafka oif, it's any carbon, in fact. And the reason you're potter is because it's Yudalid. And since it's Yudalid, you're potter because Yudalid is the Zman of the Pesach. So again, Haktara you would be chayiv, Malika you'd be potter. Keep that in mind. Burning the imurim, you be chayiv the isra of you have chametz, your own chametz. However, you do malika and your own chametz, you would be potter on the lav of leisiskar of chametz dam zivchi. Okay. Urimini, I'll ask you a stira. The stira is going to be on haktara on burning and on malika, guys. Hashoicheres a pesach ala chametz oiver b'loy sase. Okay, great. Have you the oimer afatamid? Chiddush nifla of the Mishnah, even the carbon tamid, if you own your own chametz, you will be chayev. Even the carbon tamid. Amru loy, they tell Rabbi Yehuda loy amru ela b'pesach bulvad. Ein Messiah, b'zman sheyesh l'shoichet, good, l'zoyrek, good, or le'echem eriv chaboyer, good, or le'echem b'seifa oilam ein zakek loy sofa no chidushim, ve'echad ha'shoichet, ve'echad ha'zoyrek, ve'echad ha'moilik. There you go, Malika Sestira, you just told me Malika Yipata, here you see Malika Yechayev. Guys, with the oil side, with the hot side, you go like this. You sprinkle, go like this with the blood. The oif you squash, the chatas you go like this. The oilless oif you squash against the wall. The chatas oif you go like this. Now, when you do the kmitza from the mincha, the part that is equated with shvita, that you're putting your hand in, and whatever's in between these fingers, you're going to burn on the mizbeach. Eino oive if you're on chametz b'loy saseh. Hamakdes emurim, someone who brings the emurim, ain't over b'loy saseh. So l'chayri, that last line is also shver. Guys, in the first bais we said haktor is chayev, malik is pata. In the second bais we say malik is chayev and haktor is pata. How do you reconcile the difference between malika, the nipping? They use the term nipping. I used to learn nipping when my father was fought the guys in the Pacific. We used the word nipping, right? But I go over here. But anyway, kasha malika, kasha malika. Kasha aktara aktara. Good. Ulataimech. Tikshi lechohagufa. Why don't you ask on the Bryce itself? The Tani. Loyomer Pesach Bovad. Bohad the Tani Echad Shecheh Ve'echad Zarek Ve'echad Amolik Ve'echad Amazeh. Guys, the Bryce innately is shver. The Korban Pesach is a sheep, and you said you only chayiv in the Pesach, and in the same breath you said, but you are chayiv for Malika. Malika is on a bird. How do you reconcile that? You told me you only chayiv for the Pesach, and now you're telling me you chayiv for Malika? Malika is on a bird. Pesach has to be the sheep or a goat. So how do you reconcile that? Elahava Reb Shimon, guys. Both prices are Reb Shimon. The price that says Malika is pot and the one that says Malika is chayiv is contra Reb Shimon. The one that says Malika like kasha. Why? Kan ba'arba asa, kan b'chayla shalmoid. If you do it on arba asa, guys, since what? It's the 14th day, and the Korban Pesach could be bought. What's our rule of thumb? The Zman of the Pesach, the only carbon you could be over is the Pesach. Anything else not. Anything else, an oila, shlomim, you would not be over on having chametz in your possession in the time you could check the Pesach. Therefore, if I do malika in the time when I can have the Pesach on your talid, I'm pater. And when am I chayiv? By doing cholish shalmoid. Cholish shalmoid, I go ahead, I bring a carbon, I own chametz. I would be chayiv even if I'm moilik. That's Reb Shimon. Okay, and that would answer the stira. The either Reb Shimon he haktorah nami like kasha. What about we have a problem? The first one says haktorah emurim yechayiv, and the second one says yipata. That's also not a problem. Haktorah that's machloikas tanoim he. The demandish haktorah l'shchita, the one that makes hekesh to shchita, and therefore you be chayiv. The command loy makish. So if you make the hekesh from burning to shchita, you be chayiv. That's the first brisa. The latter brisa that says yipata does not make the hekesh. So we had a stira malika. We had a stira what haktorah. Malika was not a problem. Pata was on Yudalid. Chayiv was on Chol Shamoid. Haktorah is compared to Shoichet is Chayiv. Haktorah compared to Shoichet is Pata from the Isra, like Sishka al Chametz Dam Zivchi. Continues the Gemara. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer Afat Tamid. Rabbi Yehuda said even the Tamid you'll be over on the Sishka al Chametz Dam Zivchi. My time to Rabbi Yehuda. It's said by Pesach. Amalach Zivchi. When it says Zivchi, it's Zevach HaMiyuchadli. Like my zivchi, like sishlach my zevach. What's my zevach? The zevach that's unique to me is that my ninu tamid. That's the carbon tamid. If Shimon oima pesach ba'arba asa. If Shimon says the pesach and arba asa and all the other, if you shech l'shmoi, guys, if you shech l'shmoi and arba asa, you would be what? You would be potter on arba asa. Why? Because if you shech l'shmoi a carbon pesach l'shmoi on after you. It's not good, right? If you do go ahead and shech shaloi lishma, the carbon would be good. But again, if it's in the zman of the Pesach, it's no good. Not in the zman of Pesach, it would be good. My time of the Shimon the Chsiv, it says zivchi. It says twice the lashon zivchi, right? And now let's take the yud and play games. Trey zimni kori be zevach. Take the yud, guys, from the first zivchi and put it on the second one, and we can read it as zevach, and the one is zivchai. You can read it as Zevach, and the other one as Zivchai. Kori be Zevach, which is the Korban Pesach, and Zivchai, my Karbonos. So we see that it's Shaykh by all Karbonos, the Isra of L'Sishka Al-Chametz Dam Zivchi. Again, said Rav Shimon, if you go ahead and you bring a carbon not on your Dalit, let's say you bring it on Cholamoy, we just said, or you bring it after you bring it on Tezvav or Tezayin, you bring a carbon and you have Chametz, you be Chayiv. Because we read the word Zivchai, my Karbanos. Why do we divide it up? Why don't we just say the word Zivchai and include the Pesach in it? Why are we spreading it out? Guys, look, if you want to tell me Yechayiv and Ol Karbanos, just say Zivchai, one word. You didn't. You said Zevach, Pesach, Zivchai. Why did you spread it out? Because we're going ahead and saying this din of what? Of you only Chayiv on this when this is not around. If the Pesach's around, then you're not chayiv on this. That's why you split the two. The zman when the Pesach is around, you're not chayiv. That was the teretz, guys. That Malika, the second, or Malika Yechayiv, because it's speaking Chol Shamoy, the Pesach's not around. And the zman deleka zevach, when you don't have the Korban Pesach around, the chayiv of zevchai, you will be chayiv for zevchai. So Baruch Hashem, so far, nice easy Gemara, and it gets easier. Right? After last night, let me tell you. Okay, uvemoyed l'shmoy pata, right? So it says the following: if you bring it on the moyed l'shmoy pata, okay, why? Because of course it's shchita she'ena ruya. If you're going to bring it on the moyed l'shmoy, you bring a carbon pesach, guys. Good, on the moyed, meaning it's after the zman, and you bring l'shein pesach. You would be pater. Why? Because it's shchita she'ena ruya. Rav Shimon holds that shchita she'ena ruya lo yishma shchita. It's like being a carbon pesach in November. Once you get to Tesvav, it's over the zman. So the shchita is not a shchita. If the shchita is not a shchita, then I'm not chayev. Fred the Gemara, what about if you bring it stam? Stam. You don't have in mind l'shmoi or shaloi l'shmoi, right? Says the Gemara, time with the shaloi l'shmoi. The reason why you chayev is because you had in mind loy l'shmoi. That made it a shlomim. Ho stama pata, but stama you would be pata. So guys, watch. 3 madregas. You had in mind Pesach. You didn't have in mind anything, and you had in mind a shlomim. So now it's the 15th day. Shaloi l'shmo yechayev. It says zivchai, correct? And now it's not the time of Pesach, so I'd be chayev for this. So what happens if I bring it stam? If I bring it for Pesach, shaloi l'shmo Pesach, I'm potter. Because why? Because it's a shkita shein ruya. The reason over here, this finger I'm chayev, guys, is because it's what? It's shaloi l'shmo and it's a good carbon. Mashma stama, the middle madrega. If I don't bring it without any statement, you would be potter. I'm only chayiv when I bring it as a shlomen. I'm not chayiv when I bring it stam. Like in other words, think about milchiks, fleishiks, and parav. I'm only chayiv when I bring fleishiks. But if I go ahead and bring it parav, I'm potter. Stam is like parav. Time with the shaloi l'shmoi. The reason why I'm chayiv is because it's a good shchita. Shaloi l'shmoi on the 15th is a shlomen. Hastama, if I go ahead and bring it what? Parva, I don't have in mind anything. Potter. Amai, Pesach B'Shayim is a Shlamim Have. A Pesach normally is a Shlamim. So if it's normally a Shlamim, it should be a Shchita Ruya. If it's a Shchita Ruya, I should be over on the Sishcha Lechometz Tam Zivchi, because it says Zivchai. When we go ahead and extend the Yud and put it on the word Zivchi. Shmamina, Pesach B'Shayim is a Shana Baya Kira. In order to go ahead and be Chayev, I have to go ahead and ochre it completely. I have to remove it completely. It's not enough just to do it stam. I have to verbalize and say, this Pesach is a shlamim. Because again, we see over here that you weren't accurate. And the chayri, it's a shiloh, that whether you need a kira or not. I threw out the shiloh in front of the chabura. The Yarmu, they said, you don't need akira. The Baal was tamei meis. The nidchol Pesach sheni, the stumblish and Pesach koi. It was pariv, guys, but the reason I'm potter is this is not an automatic shlamim. I set aside a Pesach. I then became tamei meis. I can't bring the carbon Pesach. So what am I going to do? This Pesach is designated for what? For Pesach sheni. If I'm oiker and I say shlamim, I'd be chayiv, because now it's a good shchita. As long as I'm not oiker, right? It's stamazoi, this parav, it's going to be Pesach because I need it for Pesach. So you have no raya whether you need a kira or not, guys. The fact that stam it's a Pesach is because it's still going to be used again a second time on Yud Dalet Iyar when I bring my Pesach. Okay, the next Mishnah is going to go through the whole parsha of the whole, what exactly they did, the avoida, fascinating avoida, and we're going to see, you can't believe how many karbonos they brought on an Erev Pesach in a very, very short period of time. Okay. HaPesach nishchat b'sholosh chitas. The Pesach is brought in three, it's always brought in 3 groups. Shenemar, v'shachtu esoi kol, it was this last week's parsha. V'shachtu esoi kol kaladas Yisrael. Kahal is one group, the Eda is the second group, the Yisrael is the third group. That's our 3 groups. Nichlasa kat rishoina, the first group went in. The Smali Azara, the Azara filled up. No Ludlasais Hazara. There's going to be a machlokes in the Gemara. Did a nest happen and it got closed by itself, or did they physically have to go ahead and close it? Tiku Ariva, Tiku, they blew Tzaitzvus, they blew a Tekiah, Shua Tekiah. Hakahanim owned them Shurais, the Kahanim would stand rows and rows. Ubi Yedayim Bezichi Kesef, Ubezichi Zahav. And in their hands were vessels of gold and vessels of silver. These guys were klishares. They were kodesh and they magdish anything that was in them. Shura shekula kesef. The row of the kahanim that had silver only had silver. The shura shekula zav, and the rows that had gold had gold. Lehoyamu ravim. They didn't mix up the gold and the silver. They were. We're going to see. It's nothing to do with lumdis. It has to everything to do with beauty. It has to do that. It seems to be the symmetry of the gold, silver. It was just for Lanai. And these Bezichin did not have a bottom. Shema Yenichum v'Yakrish Adam. You worry, let's say a Kohen gets tired, he's going to take the dam, take the kli, and put it down. If it has a base, it'll stand and the blood will coagulate. So it didn't have a bottom because you wouldn't put it down, because if you put it down, it would spill. So therefore, it had no bottom. It came to a point. Shochat Yisrael v'kibel HaKoyen. A Yisrael would shecht it. A Kohen would receive it. Noisen l'chavero. He would give it to his fellow Kohen. L'chavero l'chavero. He had a whole assembly line. L'chavero mekabel es hamalei machzer es hareikon. They would go ahead, pass the full, and receive the empty. Pass the full, receive the empty. Pass the full, receive the empty. It was like this, constantly doing. Again, we're going to be, yeah, they probably had to do like this. What?
Probably.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to turn around.
So they went ahead and they had this whole assembly system. And the Kohen, who is Korvetz LaMizbeach, the Kohen was next to the Mizbeach. Zarkus Rika Achas Keneged Yisoid. He throw one spritz Keneged Yisoid. On the Mizbeach, on the north and west side, there was a Yisoid. On the north and west side, there was a base. On the south side and the east side, there was no base. On the south and east side, there was no base. So they would make sure to throw it on where there was a base on the north or west side. Yotza kat Rishayna, the first kat left, v'nichnasa kat shniya, and the second kat would enter. Yotza shniya, the second kat would leave, and nichnasa shlishis. And kamaisa Rishayna kach kamaisa shniya v'shlishis. The second and third group did the same as the first group. Karu as a halal, they'd read halal. Im Gomru, if they completed it, Shanu, they would repeat it a second time. Im Shanu, if they repeated it a second time, Shilshu, they would go ahead and say it a third time. And Alpha Bishlay Shilshu Memayhem. It never happened that they had to repeat it a third time. If you do Memayhem shall kat the Shlishis, Lahigioy, Lahafti Kishma Hashem. Even they didn't get to the third group by the time that they had this system down pat that they didn't even get to the pasuk of the capital Lahafti Kishma Skoili even the first time. Because then at that time the Amma doing the avodah, the bringing the kabbalas was so less. Again, there was no difference. They did on Shabbos as well. The Chachamim, they would go to Kahanim, they would go ahead and wash the Azara, and the Chacham were not happy with them. There was a canal that went through the Beis HaMikdash, and what they would do is they would stop the canal, and the water mamela would fill up. And again, you can imagine how much blood there was there, right? Tremendous amount of blood. We're talking about a million. We're going to see on the Amid Beis. You're talking about 1,200,000 kabbanas. 1,200,000 kabbanas, and you can imagine the amount of blood is a phenomenal amount of blood. And so to clean the azara, which was made of marble, instead of getting doing spongia, right? They would go ahead, stuff it up. The water would come in, fill up, unstuff it, and then it would go out. And the Chachamim were not happy with this on Shabbos.
Why wouldn't they be happy? I mean, wouldn't it be chatzitza? They'd be walking on the blood.
What?
Wouldn't the Kohanim be walking barefoot on the blood?
Okay, the Gemara is going to ask that, and we're going to see that speaking. There was little platforms they stood on.
Oh,
okay. The Gemara is going to ask it. Also, it's going to ask about the clothing. How if the big kahuna can't get wet, can't get full of blood and do the avodah. And now, guys, after you do the avodah sadam, you need the chelet that goes to Hashem. The imurim has to go to Hashem. How did they go ahead and do this? How did they get all the fats out to do it? So they needed again. This can't leave the azara. These fats can't leave the azara. So as we're going to see, there was a place, and when they ran out of place, they had a patent. They had a way to do this. Ketzad toilim mafshitin. Uncle Yishal Basel, they had hooks of iron. Hayikavun v'ksalim. There were kaveya on the walls, uba amudim, and on the pillars. Shebehen toilim mafshitin. And they would go ahead and hang, and they would suspend them, and they would take out the imurim. Kol mi she'en le'makam litlois l'hafshit. And anyone who did not have a hook, maklois dakim v'chalokim hoyusham. There were sticks that were smooth, and the mnichmak seifoi v'ksav chaveroi. you would leave it on your shoulder and your friend's shoulder, and you'd suspend the Korban Pesach from these sticks, and then you would go ahead and you would take out the imurim. The toilu mafshit. If your dalit fell out on Shabbos, they wouldn't use sticks. They couldn't prepare the sticks, so you'd put your hand on your friend's shoulder, and he would put his hand on your shoulder, and you would leave your other hand available to go ahead and do efshit and removing the imurim. Karoi, they would rip it open. They take out the imurim. Nasnu b'magas, they put the imurim in a plate. And they would burn it. Now it's on Shabbos. They can't carry the pesachim out. So what would they do? There was an area called the Chel that was right outside. There was an area that only the goyim could go up to, as we'll see in Shas. And the shlishis the third would stay in the Azara, and chashecha yatzu b'tzalu es b'scheyim. When it got dark, they'd go home and they'd broil their Korban Pesach at night. Amr Yitzchak, Eina Pesach nishchar ela b'gimel kitay shel shloishim. The least amount of people could be is 30. That's the least amount of people, right? My timer, kahal b'adas Yisrael. It says what? It says kahal adas Yisrael. And misafgalon that you need all 3, 10, 10, and 10, or 10, 10, 10, and 1, or what? Or 10 separate ones. That's the minimal amount. You need at least each kita to have at least 30 people, because if it's not the zachas it's a vasachas you're covered. It covers both bases. Hilkach, nami sagya, with 50 would work. Why? The aisle tilsin, the avdei, bring 30 would go in, they would do the avodah. Aisle asara, another 10 would go in, 10 would go out, 10 would go in. The nafik asara, aisle asara, 10 would go out, the nafik asara. So you'd be able to, you'd start off with 30, but out of 30, only 10 would work. Those 10 would leave, another 10 would come in, and those 10 will leave, and the other 10 would come in. We said, did they close by themselves or did they close him? Abaya says they closed by themselves. Rava Omar, they closed it. Physically, the Kahanim or Levim, somebody closed it. My Benayu, what's not Benayu? It could be Nayu, Lemismach Anisa, but you can be Samech on a nest. Abaya Omar Nalu that it closed by itself. Kama da Aili Mali, right? As many people go in, they would go in. That they would decide exactly when to stop. Well, you were not to choose, but you would go ahead and close the door. Huh?
When you ever allowed to be samach on the nace?
Samach on the nace to perform a mitzvah. I don't know. We're not samach on the nace to perform a mitzvah. I think over here it's just part of the mitzvah. Whether it be samach to count the amount of people over here. When it says you can't be samach on the nest, it means regarding the performance of a mitzvah. So you can't. Let's for example, light. You can't. The shot they asked by Hadlakas Neris by Hanukkah. They said, how can you go ahead and light from ice? It's lit for 8 days. It's a nest. I think they have that Torah. So it seems I don't know the smicha nest over here. Rashi says, so the whole zman she'ein nolan me'aleim anik me'islam l'kaneh to let him in. L'chashina dilma aili kula they'll come in. Ben kan shalosh shlitas. Seems that again, if it happened year after year, it's the Kadosh Baruch Hu showing us a little love. But Tanan of Yehuda Chas v'Sholom she'akavi b'mahalel disnada. They put a kavi b'mahalel nidius. They put him chayrim. They said Chas v'Sholom that they put him chayrim. Why? She'ein azor nenelas al kol adam Yisrael. When the azor was closed and every person you saw was in there, right? The chachma of Yer Skate kavi b'mahal. There was no one there as great in chachma and in Yer Skate as akavia. So we can't put him in chayrim. The bottom line is it says nenelas. How would you learn pshat? So Abayim Mataras Tamei Verovas Tamei. Each one will go according to his reasoning. Abayim Mataras Tamei Ein Bazar B'Shas Shininola Al Kol Adam Yisrael B'Chachmu Yerskate Kakav Mehala. So he says Shininola will close by itself. Rabbi says Mataras Tamei Ein Bazar B'Shas Shinoilin I saw when they would close it Al Kol Yisrael B'Chachmu Yerskate Kakav Mehala. Tanrabanan Despite the fact that there was a throng of people, no person ever got crushed there, except 1 year. One old man got crushed. They called it the crushed Pesach. Pamachas bikesh Agrippus HaMelech litain inav bechluse Yisrael. Agrippus HaMelech wanted to see the populace of Yisrael who were performing the Karban Pesach. Amalem l'kain gadol teinei nechad b'psachim. Go ahead, tell me. I got a count over here. So natal kulya mikolecha. He took a kidney from each Karban Pesach. And in Susham shishim riboy zuge klayos. They had 600,000 double, right? Klayim kaflayim kiyotzim mitzrayim, double the amount. That's 1,200,000 kidneys, right? Chutz mitame, aside from the people who were tamei, ashayi b'derech ha'chaycha. Ve'en lecha kol pesach ha'pesach shloi nimu leha yoysa me'asar b'nei adam. They didn't count more than 10 people. But you currently say pesach mu'uvin. They called it the thick pesach. How can you take a kidney, guys? The kidney has to be burnt. It's part, it's part of the murim. So after you just take it, they went and they burnt it. Ivak sivik tiru means that it has to be separate. You can't burn them all together. It says you burn them separately. Ivatanvik tiram that you should go ahead and burn all the murim together, not the kidneys separate. They just took one until they replaced it with something else. But in Achinami, the actual kidney was burnt with what? With its murim kilchasa, and they just, they took the kidney until they replaced it, let's say, with a stone, and then they were able to get a count. The Kahanim would stand, right, and they would have gold and silver, and they'd mix them up. My timer, Ilay Medilma Shakli did the Havel, Miley the Kaspa. Maybe they're going to take the gold and replace it with silver. Hachanami, in other words, that would be we have it in Mila B'Kotchem Maridim. So I would say that you're going down a level. It says Hachanami Dilma Shakal Bar Masayim or Mila Bar Meya. Maybe one kli is worth more than the other. Ella the Hachi Shabbat Fei. In other words, it's for beauty. There's nothing to do with Mila Mitzvahs. Has to do just with, as I said, with symmetry. Didn't have a bottom. None of the kli kodesh and the kli sharis in the Beis Hamikdash had a kalayim, had a bottom. With the exception of the kalim of levaina of lechem upon him, which was flat. If it came to a point, they'd put it on top of the lechem upon him and it would break it. So it had a wide bottom to spread out the pressure on the bread. Shachad Yisrael v'kibel ha'kayin. It says that a Jew would shecht it, a regular zar, and give it to a kayin. Fred Gemara le'sagi l'ab Yisraeli, right? Why do you need a Jew shechting it? Anyone could have shechted, even a kayin. It says mahigifu kamashma. That's the chiddush. The shchita bizar kshera. The shchita bizar is kasha. It says v'kibel ha'kayin ha'kamashmalon the mikol of eilach mitzvah kahuna. So that's the chiddush. Okay. So the chayra, what do you see when he could go ahead and do shchita, the zar, and only a kohen can be mekabel, that in the avodah from kabbalah ve'elach and haylach halacha and zrika, that's only can be formed by a kohen. Says the Gemara, haylecha shalei beregel havi halacha. Now the having in the Gemara is they stood in their spot and they didn't move at all, and they're just going ahead, and that's the haylacha, spreading it out, passing it down. That's the halacha. So you see that you don't need a halacha beregel, even as long as it's transported, even without your physically moving your body, right? It's okay. And the chayv, that's a shaila. Says the Gemara, no, not a shaila. Delmachu naidi purta, he moved a little bit, right? Shemamina halacha shle beregel havi halacha. Dilma havi naidi purta. If you're speaking where he moved, so what's the chiddush? Then why do you need so many people? No, it's physically you have to move. Why do you need so many people? With the more people involved, it brings more hiddur, more glory to Hashem. Therefore, they had the whole assembly line. If you would first give the full and then receive the empty, to first give the empty and then receive the full, loy. Messiah of Shimon Lakish, number Shimon Lakish, Aim Avirun al mitzvah. You can't go ahead and pass over a mitzvah. He said, Koyna Korah Beislam Mizbeach, go ahead and put one matana. Man Tana Pesach Bizrika. Who's the Tana that says Pesach is Bizrika? So I need to get a pasuk over here. Okay. Man Tana, who's the Tana that one Zrika does the job? So Amar Chisna Rabbi Yosef Galili, the time Yosef Galili as Bamam Tizroik Alam Mizbeach. This is speaking about a Bechor, guys. Bechor is one animal. And then it says as Damam. What does Damam mean? Their blood. So it's speaking about Bechor, who's Damam. And the answer is it's the Karbanis that are compared to a Bechor, which is Maisa Behema and a Korban Pesach. So it says as Damam Tizroik Al Mizbeach, Veschelbom Taktir. Damoy loy nemar, its blood, it doesn't say. El Damam, their blood. Chelboy loy nemar, its fat, it doesn't say. El Chelbom, their fat. Limit al Bechoru Maisu Pesach, that's the their. Shoyitunim matan domin, that they require dam on mizbeach. V'imurim legam mizbeach minalon. V'imurim legam mizbeach. I mean, so they need both. Now, minalon detunim yisoid. How do you know when you sprinkle the blood? It has to be on the north and west, which has a base. We learn that a Gzer Shava, Zrika from the carbon oila. And just like by oila needs the yisoid, so too the Bechor needs the Pesach needs the yisoid. Sivhacha as damam tizraik al mizbeach, uksivhasam bizorku b'nei Aaron kahanim as damay al mizbeach. Saviv ma oila tuni yisoid af Pesach nami tuni yisoid. Amin aleph. Oila gufa minalon amakra al yisoid mizbeach oila alma oila tuni yisoid. So just like the oila needs the yisoid, the carbon Pesach needs the yisoid. Bid you all a good night and thank you all for listening. And I'm sorry for the people who went to shul.
Rabbi.
Thank you very much, Rabbi. Good night.
The Gemara was saying that they were makbid, that you had to burn everything together. That's why he had to substitute it with the stone. But when they're throwing the bowls back and forth, they're only spritzing, they're throwing it on the bottom of his bath, but it's not coming back 100% clean, and then taking the next guy's carbon and filling it with blood again. So they're mixing two components.
They were speaking about the burning of the imurim, not the blood.
So, but again, they're not using it.
That was burning the imurim. The blood, you just have to get a little spritz on there. That does the job.
I understand that, but you can mix two carbonates together and spritz it again.
Yeah, you could. The blood's not a problem. So you just have
They
to
did that.
You have to receive all the blood. We saw by Yuma, they put it together, they mixed it.
Mix it all together. Okay, good night. Good night.
Thank you.